A millionaire finds and helps a hungry boy who was looking at the food in a bakery window, but after helping him, the boy reveals that Eric Smith was the portrait of prosperity. By the age of 45, he had already built an empire in the real estate business, with skyscrapers dominating the skies of several metropolises and luxury resorts scattered along exotic beaches. Their top-floor apartment offered a panoramic view of the city, decorated with contemporary art and custom-designed furniture. For many, Eric had everything one could want. However, when the last meeting of the day was over and the assistants left, a melancholy stillness took over the room. Eric often found himself sitting on his porch, glass of whiskey in hand, gazing out at the horizon. Despite his wealth, there was a void that material pleasures could not fill. There was no one to share his achievements with, no family waiting for him at home, just the echo of his own decisions. Reflecting on his life, Eric began to question the true value of his achievements. Their thoughts were often interrupted by a sense that something was missing, something deeper than the next major acquisition or project. On a particularly lonely night, Eric decided he needed a change. He didn't know yet how or what he needed to do, but he felt that his path was about to take a whole new direction. With that thought in mind, he began taking night walks, an attempt to connect with the world beyond the confines of his luxurious hideaway. On a rainy autumn afternoon, as Eric ventured into a less familiar part of town, he found himself walking down streets that contrasted sharply with the affluent neighborhoods he was used to. The worn facades of the shops and the hurried glances of the people were witnesses to more arduous lives and cruder realities. As he passed a local bakery, a subtle movement caught his eye. Leaning against the window, a slender boy was intently watching a basket of bread outside the establishment. The boy's breath formed small clouds of steam in the cold air, and his eyes moved agitatedly, tracing the path of each person who passed. Eric paused for a moment, watching. The boy, realizing that he was being watched, tried to disguise his interest in food, but his hand involuntarily reached out toward the loaves. His posture was that of someone who was ready to run at any sign of danger. Moved by a compassionate impulse that he himself did not fully understand, Eric approached the boy. Upon noticing Eric's approach, the boy took a step back, suspicion painted on his face. "There's no need to be afraid," Eric said, keeping his voice calm and friendly. "You look hungry. Can I help you with that?" The boy hesitated, assessing Eric's intentions cautiously. Finally, with a shy nod, he muttered a barely audible yes. "What's your name?" Eric asked, trying to establish a connection. "James," the boy replied, still cautious but visibly relieved that he would not be reprimanded or worse. "My name is Eric." "James, how about if I buy you something to eat?" "You can choose whatever you want from the bakery," Eric offered, a gesture that left the boy visibly surprised and a little more relaxed. James accepted the offer and together they entered the bakery. Eric watched as James carefully chose a sandwich and juice. While the boy ate, Eric decided to learn more about him. "Do you live around here with your family?" Eric asked, starting a conversation that he hoped would be enlightening. James, with his mouth full of sandwiches, nodded his head. "I live with my mother, but not here. We live a bit far away," he explained, hesitant to reveal too many details. Eric felt a pang of concern. It was evident that James and his mother were struggling, and something inside him told him that he couldn't just ignore it. "Do you think I can meet your mother someday?" "Maybe I can help in some way," Eric volunteered, guided by a sense of responsibility that came as suddenly as his decision to walk through that part of town. James looked at Eric, his eyes measuring the sincerity of the offer. After a long moment, he nodded affirmatively, a small smile appearing on his face. "I think she'd like that," he said, hope beginning to shine in his eyes. This unexpected encounter would mark the beginning of a new journey for Eric, a journey that would take him to places of the heart that he had never explored before. After the initial meeting with James at the bakery, Eric felt a change within himself. The unexpected connection with the boy sparked a new sense of purpose that he didn't know he was looking for. Deciding to follow this new path, he accepted James' invitation to visit his home and meet his mother, Catherine. On the appointed day, Eric went to the address James had given him. It was a modest area of the city, where the houses showed clear signs of wear and tear. Upon arriving at Catherine and James' small house, he noticed the peeling paint and the lifeless garden. Taking a deep breath, Eric walked over and rang the doorbell. Catherine answered the door. She was a middle-aged woman with gentle features, but her face bore the mark of many challenges. She was confined to a wheelchair, which explained part of James's initial hesitation to talk about her situation. Despite his condition, Catherine greeted Eric with a warm smile. "You must be the Eric James talked about so much. Please come in," Catherine said, moving to allow Eric to enter. Eric followed Catherine into the modest room, where small personal adornments tried to bring life to the room. He noticed several photos of James at different stages of his life, which clearly showed the love of a devoted mother. "Thank you for having me, Catherine. James told me a little bit about your situation, and I'd like to see if I can help in any way," Eric began, his voice full of sincerity. Catherine looked at Eric, a mixture of surprise and gratitude in her eyes. "That's very kind of you. We are not used to receiving help. Life has been a little difficult since my accident," she explained, referring to her condition that kept her in a wheelchair. During the conversation, Eric learned more about Catherine and James' lives. Catherine had been a dedicated nurse until she was in a serious car accident, which left her with reduced mobility. Since then, hardships have piled up, with scarce resources and the constant struggle to provide a decent living for James. Eric felt a deep respect and compassion for Catherine. By observing the interaction between mother and son, he realized how much they supported each other, despite the adversities. Inspired by his resilience, he offered to help with their immediate needs and began to consider ways to provide more sustainable assistance. "Catherine, I'd like to start by helping with some of your basic needs. Food, maybe some home improvements. And I want to look at a better wheelchair for you, something that actually improves your mobility," Eric offered, already planning the next steps in his mind. Catherine, touched by Eric's generosity, just nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you, Eric. Your kindness means so much to us," she said, her voice choked with emotion. After his first visit to Catherine and James' home, Eric found himself deeply involved in their lives. He began by addressing the immediate needs he had promised to help solve. More nutritious food was regularly delivered to their home, and he hired professionals to make small but significant improvements to the house, making it more affordable and comfortable for Catherine. In addition, Eric made good on his promise to acquire a new, more functional wheelchair for Catherine. When he arrived with the chair, the look of joy and surprise on Catherine's face was something Eric would remember for a long time. Catherine tried the chair, moving more easily than before, and her gratitude was palpable. "Eric, you didn't really have to do all that," Catherine said, still marveling at how easily she could now move around the house. "I wanted to do that, Catherine. Seeing you better is more than enough for me," Eric replied sincerely. He was beginning to realize that in helping Catherine and James, he was, in a way, healing a part of himself that had long been dormant. As the weeks passed, Eric made it a point to visit Catherine and James regularly. These visits became the most anticipated moments of the week for him. He would bring James games and books, and spend hours talking to Catherine about a variety of topics. During these conversations, Eric learned about Catherine's previous life as a nurse, about her passion for helping others, and about the challenges she faced after the accident. James, who was initially shy around Eric, began to see him as a father figure. They spent time together playing chess or exploring science and history books, which James devoured with increasing enthusiasm. In one of these encounters, while James was in the room steeped in an adventure book, Catherine shared more about her accident and the subsequent difficulties. "I never imagined that my life would take this turn, Eric. But having James and now his friendship, it all feels a little more bearable," Catherine confided, her voice charged with emotion. Eric, listening intently, felt an even deeper connection form. "Catherine, I feel very fortunate to have found you. You gave me a new perspective on what really matters in life," he admitted, his own voice revealing a rare vulnerability. The relationship between Eric, Catherine and James grew stronger by the day. Eric was discovering a family he never had, and with every gesture of kindness, every laugh shared, and every deep conversation, the three of them became inseparable. Inspired by the progress and growing affection between him, Catherine, and James, Eric decided to organize a special day for them in his luxurious apartment. He wanted to offer Catherine and James an experience they had never had before, something that transcended the daily grind and brought a little bit of his world into theirs. Before the big day, Eric spent hours planning every detail. He organized a variety of activities that he thought they would enjoy, including a movie session featuring James's favorite films, a lunch prepared by a chef who was specially called for the event, and an afternoon of board games and puzzles. When Catherine and James arrived at Eric's apartment, they were amazed by the panoramic view of the city from the top of the building. James ran to the window, his eyes shining with excitement as he looked down at the scenery from above. Catherine, moving more easily in the new wheelchair, joined him, sharing his astonishment. "Eric, this is amazing!" James exclaimed, almost breathless. "I've never seen the city like this." "I'm glad you like it, James. Today is all about discovering new things," Eric replied, smiling as he saw the joy on the boy's face. The chef then invited them to the dinner table, where colorful dishes awaited them. Catherine and James were treated to a meal that included some of the finest dishes in local and international cuisine, a true feast for the senses. "Eric, this is all very generous. How can we be grateful?" Catherine asked, clearly touched by the attention and care put into the day. "Just enjoying every moment, Catherine. That's all I ask," Eric replied, his heart warming at how happy he had made his friends. After lunch, they gathered in the living room where a stack of board games awaited them. Eric, Catherine, and James spent the afternoon playing games, laughing, and sharing stories. It was a time of laughter and light conversations that brought the trio even closer. As the day drew to a close, Eric led Catherine and James out onto the balcony, where one last surprise awaited them, a telescope pointed at the horizon. James, fascinated by stars and planets, was delighted with the opportunity to observe the night sky. "Look, James. You can see the constellations from here," Eric explained, helping the boy adjust the telescope. Catherine, watching the two, felt a surge of emotion. "Eric, you have made this one of the most memorable days of our lives. I don't know how we're going to repay all this kindness," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You've given more than enough," Eric replied, looking at the two of them, his new family. "You have brought joy and purpose to my life in a way I never imagined." The special day at Eric's apartment not only strengthened the bonds between them, but it also revealed how deep and meaningful their relationship had become. After the special day at Eric's apartment, the relationship between him, Catherine, and James solidified even more. As Eric continued to play a significant role in the lives of mother and son, an unexpected event was about to unravel a hidden link to his past. On a quiet afternoon, as James showed Eric some of his favorite belongings that he kept in a small box, one object in particular caught Eric's eye. It was a delicate silver bracelet with a small heart pendant. Eric immediately recognized the jewel. It was a gift he had given to Amy, his great love from the past, years ago. "That bracelet was my mom's," James explained, noting Eric's interest. "My adoptive mother, Catherine, gave it to me after my biological mother passed away when I was born." Eric held the bracelet with trembling hands, feeling a whirlwind of emotions. The unexpected return of this object from her past caused memories of Amy to flood her mind. Amy had been the only woman he had truly loved, and her sudden disappearance had left an open wound in his heart. "Can you tell me more about your birth mother?" Eric asked, trying to stay calm as a mixture of hope and fear filled him. James nodded and began to talk about what Catherine had told him. Her name was Amy. Catherine said she was very nice and kind, but died due to complications in childbirth. I've never met her, but Catherine always makes a point of telling me what she was like. Eric listened, every word adding weight to his heart. He decided he needed to talk to Catherine to better understand the story. Later that day, he broached the matter with Catherine. Gently, he asked about Amy, mentioning the bracelet and how it was connected to her past. Catherine, realizing the seriousness of the moment, explained everything she knew. Amy was a very close friend of mine. When she died, she asked me to take care of James. She loved you so much, Eric. He never forgot you. Hearing this, Eric felt as if time had stopped. The love of his life had given him, without him knowing it, a son. The impact of this revelation was overwhelming, and he needed a moment to process all the emotions that came up. In the days that followed, Eric reflected deeply on his newfound connection with James. Despite the initial pain and shock, he also felt a new wave of determination. He was more committed than ever to caring for James and Catherine, not just as friends or as a responsibility, but as their true family. After the revelation of Eric's connection to Amy, and consequently to James, he found himself at a crossroads of emotions. The pain of the past, mixed with the surprise of discovering that she had a child, brought both confusion and renewed clarity. Determined to face these revelations with courage and hope, Eric committed himself even more to the well-being of Catherine and James, seeing them now not only as close friends, but as his family. In that spirit, Eric made a decision that would change Catherine's life in a significant way. He offered to fund surgery that could potentially allow Catherine to walk again, an opportunity she thought was out of her reach due to financial limitations. "Catherine, I've thought long and hard about our situation, and I'd like to help more," Eric began sitting next to her on a quiet afternoon. "There is a surgery, a procedure that could help her regain mobility. I'd like to cover all the costs if you're willing to consider it." Catherine, surprised and a little hesitant, looked at Eric with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "Eric, that's more than generous, it's incredible. But it's a big decision. What if it doesn't work?" "I understand your fears, Catherine, but I believe it's worth a try. Not just for the physical benefit, but also for what it means to us, moving forward, facing our challenges together," Eric explained, holding her hand fondly. After much conversation and medical consultations, Catherine agreed to go ahead with the surgery. Eric was by her side every step of the way, offering support and making sure she received the best possible treatment. The day of the surgery arrived, and Eric waited anxiously in the hospital, thinking about how life had brought him and Catherine to this moment. James, equally anxious, stood beside Eric, holding his hand, finding comfort in each other's presence. After hours of waiting, the doctor finally came out with good news: the surgery had been a success. "Catherine is fine, and now it's a matter of recovery and rehabilitation," the doctor informed, drawing a sigh of relief from Eric and James. Over the next few months, Catherine underwent a rigorous physical therapy process, with Eric and James always by her side. Eric, seeing Catherine's effort and determination, felt an even greater admiration for her. With every little progress Catherine made, hope in the house grew. Gradually, with a lot of struggle and persistence, Catherine began to make her first independent steps. Each step was celebrated as a monumental victory, a testament to his strength and the unwavering support of his family. With Catherine's successful surgery in the beginning of her rehabilitation, the dynamic between Eric, Catherine, and James transformed. The house, previously marked by worries and limitations, now vibrated with a spirit of optimism and renewal. Catherine, despite initial difficulties and physical pain, was making astonishing progress, buoyed by the constant support and loving presence of Eric and James. Eric, who once found satisfaction in the numbers of his business transactions, now found unparalleled joy in Catherine's small triumphs of everyday life. He was actively involved in her rehabilitation, frequently reading about new therapies and discussing with the physiotherapists to ensure that Catherine received the best possible care. "Catherine, you're doing amazing," Eric said during a physical therapy session, watching her take a few more cautious steps with the help of parallel bars. "I wouldn't have made it this far without you and James," Catherine replied, smiling at him with gratitude and affection. "You two are my strength." James, for his part, has adapted to his mother's new role as an encourager and helper. He was always by her side, holding her hand during exercise or bringing her a glass of water when she looked tired. Adversity had matured James, and his resilience and kindness reflected the qualities Eric admired so much in Catherine. As the months passed and Catherine continued to improve, the house began to fill up with new plans and possibilities. Discussions about future trips, family dinners, and even small parties began to take shape. Eric, wishing to create more happy memories, suggested a trip to the beach as soon as Catherine felt ready. "I imagine I've never seen James so excited," Eric remarked one night as they planned the trip. "He loves the sea, but we haven't been in years," Catherine replied. "This trip is going to mean a lot to us, Eric. For all of us." Eventually, the big day arrived, and Catherine was able to walk with minimal assistance. The celebration was simple but deeply meaningful. Eric, Catherine, and James shared a special dinner, toasting to new beginnings and the bonds that had made them inseparable. "To family, to love and to new beginnings," Eric said, raising his glass. "To the family," Catherine and James echoed, their faces lit up with smiles. As Catherine recovered and everyone's lives began to normalize, a new dimension of the relationship between Eric and Catherine began to take shape. In the long months of Catherine's recovery, Eric had become a constant presence in the household, not only as a benefactor, but as a member of the family. The closeness brought a new emotional intimacy, and slowly, deeper feelings began to emerge between them. On a hot summer night, as they sat together on the porch of Catherine's house, watching James play in the garden, the conversation took a more personal turn. "You've changed our lives, Eric," Catherine said, her gentle gaze meeting his. "I don't know how we would have gotten this far without you." Eric smiled, looking at her with an admiration that had grown day by day. "You gave me something I'm forever grateful for, Catherine. One family, one purpose, something I didn't even know was missing." The silence that followed was comfortable, filled with recognition of all they had shared and overcome together. It was Catherine who broke the silence, her voice a little hesitant. "Eric, I began to feel something more for you, over these months. More than gratitude or friendship. I don't want to assume, but—" Eric interrupted her, holding her hand tenderly. "I feel it too, Catherine. Something deeper grew between us. I was waiting for the right moment to talk about it." Catherine's eyes lit up with the confirmation of her feelings. "I was afraid it was just me," she admitted with a shy smile. "No, it's definitely not just you," Eric replied, smiling back. "I think we're starting a new chapter together, don't you think?" In the days that followed, their relationship blossomed openly. Eric and Catherine began to share not only the responsibilities of the house and the care of James, but also moments of leisure and small celebrations that marked each stage of Catherine's recovery. They decided together to take a trip to celebrate Catherine's recovery, choosing a quiet destination on the coast where they could enjoy moments of peace and romance. The trip was a milestone, solidifying their commitment to each other. During the trip, on a clear night under the stars, Eric officially proposed to Catherine. "I want to spend the rest of my days with you, if you will accept me," he said, a simple but elegant ring in hand. With tears of happiness, Catherine accepted. "I can't imagine my life without you, Eric." "Yes, I do." Upon returning from the trip, they announced their engagement to James, who was elated to see the two people he loved most officially getting married. With Eric and Catherine's engagement made official and Catherine's health almost fully restored, the family began planning a future together. The wedding was planned to be an intimate but deeply meaningful ceremony celebrated on the same beach where they had cemented their commitment during the trip. As the preparations for the wedding progressed, Eric, Catherine and James found a new rhythm of life. The house was often filled with laughter, music, and plans for the future. James, now more enthusiastic than ever, helped with the wedding preparations, eager to see Eric officially become part of the family. The wedding ceremony was as magical as they expected. Held at sunset, with the soothing sound of the waves as background music, Eric and Catherine exchanged vows that were promises of undying love, support, and dedication to the family they had formed. James had the honor of being the best man, a role he took on with great pride and excitement. "I promise to love and respect you, in sickness and health, in wealth and in poverty, every day of my life," Eric said, looking into Catherine's eyes, which lit with tears of happiness. "I promise to be your partner, your confidant, and to love you and James with all my heart, every day of our life together," Catherine replied, her voice firm despite the emotion. After the ceremony, the guests, a small group of close friends and family, celebrated the union with a beach party. The evening was filled with dancing, laughter, and many moments of shared joy. In the months and years that followed, Eric, Catherine, and James enjoyed a full and rich life. Eric continued to thrive in his business, but now with a different perspective, always ensuring that family time was his priority. Catherine, completely recovered and stronger than ever, has resumed her passion for nursing, working on projects and helping those in need. James grew up under the loving guidance of his parents, growing into a bright young man who was determined to do his part to make the world a better place, inspired by his parents' example. Eric and Catherine's home often resonated with visits from friends and family, celebrations of small and big hits, and most importantly, the love and constant laughter that were testaments to a life well lived. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.